Welcome. Today we're talking about motivation, and in particular there's a reading assignment, chapters 4, 5, and 6 of Phillips, and chapter 10 of Kouzes and Posner. And as leaders, a major challenge that we have to do is inspire our followers. I want to show how these readings shed light onto this, and hopefully in our own lives as leaders, in our own development as leaders, we start to understand how followers are motivated, how we can inspire them. And Lincoln's a great example, because often when we think of inspiring, we think of some charismatic preacher who's very, very, very high energy, high passion, high whatever. But we don't think of Lincoln as that. Gettysburg Address, a very short thing, very short, but very pithy. When he ran for president, he didn't make any speeches. Of course, he could get passionate. He was passionate. He was very results-oriented. He had a strong backbone. But you wouldn't think of him as a drill sergeant type of inspiration. Yet, so many people gave their lives for what he did. And I guess what I want to talk about today is how he did that. So, motivation. Number 2. Okay, so from the reading, the first thing I want to mention is chapter 6, one of the assigned chapters. So what do we know about Lincoln? Have the courage to handle unjust criticism. Lincoln understood that followers responded to kindness and empathy rather than vindictiveness and animosity. He wasn't an angry leader about things. He understood that people don't like to hear angry. They like to hear kindness and animosity. And he as a president, encountered so much unjust criticism. He was called an ape, a grotesque baboon, and a dishonest politician. This is Honest Abe, called a dishonest politician. So whoever called him a dishonest politician didn't win. In history, we call him Honest Abe. And indeed, he did, from what we know of Lincoln, he did indeed value the truth. So how would Lincoln deal with this unjust criticism? And there's a lesson here for, I think, all leaders. He'd ignore it. He'd just stick to his job. He'd get tough if he did hear about the unjust criticism. It'd at first really bother him, but after a while he'd just sort of let it flow. I used to say like water off a duck's back. He'd stick to his job of saving the country. Yeah, he's got his job to do. Just stick to that. He would, if he got angry about something, he would write letters, like a therapy. So he would write a letter with a rebuttal to whoever was insulting him, and then he wouldn't send the letter. The old dictum of count to 10, and if you're still angry, count to 10 again, repeat. Not back down or compromise. If he did have to, when he was in a mood and he was forced to confront unjust criticism, he would just stick to his truth. He would say simple truths. He says, you want the Union to divide? I'm sorry, I am for the Union. You want to maintain slavery? I'm sorry, slavery is wrong. And I firmly believe it to be wrong. So in his major ethical positions, he did not back down at all. Tell the truth in simple terms. He made an art form of telling the truth in terms that the common person could understand. Very simple, just the facts. And he told humorous stories. If someone's insulting you and you tell some sort of humorous story about, a steamboat that's got a 7-foot pipe and a 5-foot boiler or whatever his story, it sort of is a nice way to endear you to your audience. Especially, Lincoln knew what was right and what was wrong, and he stuck to the right positions, the ethical positions. He never deviated to the wrong. So as leaders, I think there's some very good points. So many leaders I see don't respond this way with criticism. And it makes me wonder what ethical positions they really hold. Now, there's a concept that Lincoln shows, this concept of emotional intelligence. He had the capability. It's something we can't teach in school. It's the ability to perceive and express emotion. And in particular, emotion, there are 5 types here. Look at this bottom bullet here, self-awareness. You have to be aware of your own feelings. You have to know what makes you tick, know what motivates you, know what you don't like, know what turns you off. Lincoln was very aware that honesty is something he admires, dishonesty is something he absolutely abhorred. Self-regulation, your ability to, when confronted with a challenging situation, you're able to control your reaction. You regulate your behavior. If you have emotional intelligence, you tend to have high motivation because you know what makes yourself tick, and you know what motivates you, and you can put yourself in positions, hopefully, that you are motivated to fill. Empathy, understanding other people's feelings. Social skills, understanding what's tactful, what's not tactful to say in situations. And relationship management, your ability to form relationships that are positive, supportive. So, Chapter 6, Emotional Intelligence. What else do we have to read this week? What else were the assigned readings? The Kouzes and Posner piece, leadership is an affair of the heart. Yes, leaders should be passionate. If leaders are not passionate about what they do, then how can you expect followers to be passionate in following you? So Lincoln greatly, so how do we get that passion? And that's going to be a theme throughout. Lincoln greatly valued honesty and integrity. And this quote just sprung out at me, page 54. Trust, honesty, and integrity are exceedingly important because they so strongly affect followers. Geez, it's not yelling at them, or it's not money, or it's not power. How do you strongly affect followers? Is it just by being honest and trustworthy and integrity with them? I think so, actually. And you might disagree, but if you say something else like money strongly affects followers, or promotions, or status, try coupling status with the fact that with somebody who's untrustworthy or dishonest or lacks integrity. Is the status really worth it then? I think something to think about. We all have to make decisions along these lines, but I would urge you to strongly consider the value of being trustworthy, of being honest, and having integrity. Lincoln shunned dishonest folks. He ridiculed them, he made fun of them, he stayed away from them, and I have a hard time shunning dishonest folk, but maybe you can. Honesty can be contagious. Try to make it so in your organization. Okay, human capabilities. So what are we trying to get our followers to do? Well, at the lowest level, we can ask them to be obedient. The drill sergeant makes a soldier obedient, and that's what the Army needs, but it's the lowest human capability. Diligence. More than just obeying somebody, you're actually doing the job carefully and with extra effort. That's better than mere obedience. We have a higher capability now. Still, you're not going to go very far with just diligence in today's economy. Next, intelligence. That's what you're in school for. Intelligence matters. However, your degrees and so forth are fungible. There are people with degrees throughout the world, and you are not going to compete with just intelligence. A higher level, initiative. If you have initiative, wow, now you have an organization of people. If you can get your followers to show initiative, they'll look for problems, they'll probably go out and solve them, and you don't really have to do much if they have initiative. Now you have an organization that's sort of very valuable now. Now you have a very high level of human capability. And it is indeed, with initiative, you'll get a lot done. Well, there are two other human capabilities that Hamill had in his 2007 piece, and it's called the Hamill Pyramid. The next one is creativity. With creativity, you can go out and solve problems, but do it creatively. And we need that. We need that to solve. How did Apple figure out that we needed to listen to more music when there were already iPods? But beyond creativity, and this speaks to the Kouzes and Posner, leadership is an affair of the heart, passion. That's the highest human capabilities. How do we get passion out of our followers? I think if you look at leadership in this way, you have a very different view. It's not simply ordering people around. You'll get diligence and obedience from them. How do you get your followers to be passionate about what they do? Passionate people. They're passionate about their jobs. They will see the obstacles and they will doggedly work to overcome those obstacles for as long as it takes until that obstacle is overcome. Well, if you have an organization of people who do that, you're going to succeed. Good luck. So, repeat. Basic problem of leadership. How does a leader inspire followers? In competitive economies, firms need to get the best out of their people. Mere obedience will not be adequate. Intelligence people are available worldwide at very low cost. If you're in the United States, sorry, your degree isn't enough. But you have a lot more to offer to your firms than just a degree. You have your initiative, creativity, and passion. You need to have passionate followers. The leader's challenge is to engender that passion. Now, Kouzes and Posner sort of say that, well, passion is something that is inspired by leaders who are indeed having an affair of the heart. If leaders are passionate, that passion can be infectious. Okay, maybe, if what followers do is imitate leaders. And maybe they do, in some extent. But we have to look at followers as separate people. And let's look at what motivates them. So let's go to motivation theory. So what are the forces within a person that affect the direction and intensity? So why do followers exert themselves? And then, of course, background here is how can leaders, what role do leaders play, according to each of these theories, that will engender passion? So, first, three needs theory. You have a self-assessment exercise on this. It's a theory of motivation based on three learned needs: achievement, affiliation, power. And there are others. Some have 4 needs, 5. There are other needs, but this is McClelland's original 3 needs theory. Okay, needs are learned and determined by the gap between actual level and desired level. So, if you have a high need for power, that means that there's a gap between your actual power and desired power. So you want more power than you have. Therefore, you're motivated by power. So suppose you get a promotion. Now your actual level of power approaches your desired level. The gap is smaller, and your need for power goes down. And power will not motivate. You might be motivated after a promotion by achievement or by affiliation. But the need for power, the desired level for power, is learned. That's the theory. So maybe in 2 years or so, you might say, hey, well, I've been promoted to this level, but now I desire a higher level of power. and then power will once again motivate you. So then you get promoted again, and so forth. So if you're a firm, firms use this idea to maybe promote people. It takes a couple years really to have a high need for something like power. Probably most of you, when you did your self-assessments, well, I'm not going to tell you now because maybe you haven't done it. You'll figure it out when you read, when you do the assessment. Next one, motivator hygiene theory. There's one insight from this that I want to share with you. It's Hertzberg's theory. So basically, what happens with motivator hygiene theory is the causes of dissatisfaction on the job are different from the causes of satisfaction. What causes dissatisfaction? And those are called hygiene factors. They cause dissatisfaction. And the number one thing here is salary. If you're complaining about your salary, you're dissatisfied. That's fine. Working conditions. It's a noisy office. The cubicles are too small. I don't have whatever. I don't have a corner office. I have to walk to get the whatever. And coworkers. My coworkers. But these are all like environmental things. These are called lower level needs. And indeed, if people are dissatisfied with salary, they will leave. So that's a problem. But if you increase someone's salary, they may be less dissatisfied, but they won't necessarily be more motivated. I'll get to the recession effect in a bit. Okay, now the motivator factors cause satisfaction. So what are motivators? They're called intrinsic factors. They're things like the work itself, your achievement, your feeling that you're achieving something, your accomplishment. The motivation factors will cause motivation, whether or not these cause motivation. So the theory says that if you want to make people work harder, just demand more for them. Say, in order for you to have an acceptable level of achievement, you need to work harder. Just ask them to work harder. That's the recession effect. This recent recession, so many people in the United States worked harder without higher salary. Salary is just, well, in a recession, companies were laying off people, so more work was being done by fewer people. So that means productivity had to go up, people had to work harder. Well, by changing the achievement, the demand for achievement, you made people work harder. People were more motivated. The salary was not going to be a problem for firms because if you quit, you can't find a job somewhere else. And that's the one function of salary. It's to reduce turnover. So, the implication of this is, if you want to motivate somebody, don't do it by salary. If you give people raises, and fine, you don't want to lose them, you give them a raise. But match the raise with extra job responsibilities. The extra job responsibilities will motivate them to work harder and earn the higher salary, which works from the firm position. Other point of view. If you give someone a raise without any increase in job responsibilities, people tend to not work any harder. They'll be happier, less dissatisfied, yes, but they're not going to work harder. That's what the theory says. Think about it. That hold water? Expectancy theory of motivation. There are many situations where people are very motivated to work even though they don't have a high salary, they don't have high status, they don't have, young people starting their careers often work very hard. Why do they work hard? They're not getting a high salary, they're not maybe doing very demanding stuff from the firm's perspective. Well, the expectancy theory of motivation accounts for that. People will work hard, according to the expectancy theory, because they're achieving something that they want. Okay? So let's look at how it goes. So, their efforts will pay off. So they're motivated. So people will work hard on a project. Why? Because when the project is completed, they expect to get recognized. Their performance will lead to some output that is desired by the firm. And that's the performance. So you work hard if you're doing something important for the firm. Now, of course, that's violated if you work hard for something like cleaning out the stock room. You work hard to clean out the stock room and then nobody recognizes that, so you're not going to be motivated. You don't have that link to performance. But if you work hard on a project, a client proposal, then that's going to link to performance. The next thing is there's another expectancy link here. That performance leads to valence. By valence, I mean achieving some higher level goal that you feel good about. And this is where leadership can come in with values. Suppose you're working for a tobacco company. That's a good example. You work hard, you increase efficiency of production, good performance. But then you find out that that performance just makes it easier for people to smoke more cigarettes. And you start to think about it and say, you know, I don't want to do this. I don't value this end result of getting of helping people to smoke. So you lose the motivation that way. Okay. Now, if leaders can link the purpose of their organization to some higher good, like IKEA democratizing the furniture industry, then you have a good valence. You get that link quite well. So the role of leader in expectancy theory is a servant leader. What leaders do is make sure that that followers are given the appropriate job responsibilities, are put on the right projects, are given the resources to complete those projects, resources, training, coworkers, status, and then and to shepherd and to communicate with everyone else in the organization that the followers are doing a good job, and then all these links fall into place. Equity theory. The theory explaining how people develop perceptions of fairness in the distribution of exchange. Okay, so compare the ratio of outputs. So, what are outputs? The outputs you get into it from a job are salary, but also sometimes people will take a lower salary if they get good working conditions. So you might get maybe a short commute. You might get a positive work environment, supportive work environment, a safe work environment. So the outputs you get from a job are, things that are valued. Salary, status, conditions, those kinds of things. Inputs to a job are your experience, your education, but also your effort. So inputs includes your effort. Now the ratio of outputs to inputs is some abstract principle. But we have in our mind that, hey, I'm getting this salary, I have this status, so I'll put this much into it. That's kind of a sense that people get. Now you compare that ratio with a referent other. So if you are making a salary of X and you're getting a pretty good job, and someone else is getting a higher salary, how can you justify that with similar otherwise work conditions? Well, maybe they're high salary, but they're dangerous, so their outputs are about the same as yours, so you put about the same effort. But if someone gets a higher salary and you see that they're not working as hard, even though you're just as qualified, then you're going to say, well, geez, this is not equity. Somebody is getting a better salary, better outputs, and not working as hard, while I'm working really hard and getting a less salary. So I'm going to be dissatisfied. That ratio is not right. And if I'm dissatisfied, I'm going to do things like maybe decrease effort. People will tend to maybe complain. You might try to get the other person to work harder, or decrease that salary, or increase your salary to be fair. This idea of distributive justice matters. So that's the equity theory does explain motivation. Now, an issue with equity theory is you got to identify the referent. So if your referent is maybe your boss, it may be hard to, you may be dissatisfied because you don't see that your boss is working as hard as he or she should. But maybe what your boss can do then is say, well, don't compare yourself with me, compare yourself with somebody in another department or somebody in another place. And then, so identifying the referent and using a different referent is a good way to change someone's equity assessment. I know in my department I like to compare myself with finance if I want to feel like I'm in an inequity situation. I compare myself with maybe the English department faculty if I want to feel good. So I mean there are ways of rationalizing this. Okay. The last motivation theory I want to mention is the job characteristics model. So people are motivated by the characteristics of the job. So there are 5 characteristics that tend to motivate people, and this is something to keep in mind if you want to motivate, and they all have links to some of the other theories. First is skill variety. If you require people to do jobs that require lots of different skills, then that's less boring and more motivating than a job that is the same thing. Task identity. Does the output of your job, does your task, is it linkable to you? If you do a job, if I write a paper, that paper is my paper, and I identify with that. But if I just, all I do is edit other people's papers, is my editing as identified with me? I don't know. Task significance. Task significance means I'm doing a job and it's important for the firm that this job is done. And this links maybe with some of the other theories we talked about. That, with the expectancy theory. If I'm doing a job and it's recognized and it's important to the firm, then I'm going to be more motivated than if my job is cleaning out the stock room and it's not. Autonomy. People tend to be motivated by autonomy. If they're given control over their lives rather than ordered around day to day to day, minute to minute to minute, people are allowed to self-structure their time, then they have autonomy and control, and people like that. And feedback. People tend to value feedback. Regular, constant feedback. Don't ignore your followers. Keep doing feedback. So here are some models that explain leadership, explain motivation. And, well, play with the ideas. Figure out how your leadership style can motivate according to these theories. So which theory explains leaders' ability to inspire passion? All of them? Yes. And none of them? Yes. It's something to think about. We don't have a really good answer to that. These theories of motivation are all different. They're all at least partially right. And leaders can tap into different motivation theories at different times. Hopefully, if you become familiar, as you become more familiar with these motivation theories, you can understand better what makes your followers tick and how you can tap into them and best work with them to motivate them to do well for the firm. Just repeating again, Lincoln was a gentle, humorous person. He was determined and decisive, but he was gentle. Not a fire and brimstone charismatic. How did he motivate so many to give their lives? That's an open question too. And I think we have to look at integrity and trust and honesty and the subtle yet powerful effects that those values have. And then how can you apply these theories? That's an open question. So as you do the discussion board exercises, as you think about the readings and this presentation, hopefully you'll be able to go the next step. Thank you for your time. We'll see if I can move up. Please keep your emails coming. Give me feedback. I want to improve as your professor. If hopefully this has been a useful exercise.